Hi, and welcome to the Rowing on the Square, the podcast. I'm Adrian, your host, and today I'm here to talk about 2K. I had a question from a person on Instagram. They were asking me whether if they added more drag, they currently were at 120 drag for their 2K. If they added more drag and went to 125, did I think that it would improve their 2K score? The quick answer would be potentially. So we first have to talk about what is drag and how is it affecting your drive and your 2K score. So your drag is a feature of resistance on the rowing machine. So it's not a true resistance, like you can turn up the resistance and it's going to affect everyone the same way. It's not like a poundage kind of thing. It's the amount of air that's being allowed into the machine in combination with how you put your drive into the machine. And what I start to pay attention to when I'm working with an athlete, when we're trying to figure out what is the proper drag factor for their 2K, is what is your drive time with that particular drag factor. So when I'm working with a novice 13-year-old girl who's maybe long and lanky and not have have a lot of power, I try to take the drag off of the machine so that let them be efficient. So we want to make sure that we're driving back in a way that is efficient and not muddy. For your average junior, a drive time of 0.6 to 0.7, meaning the time that it takes to go from the catch to the finish driving, could be 0.6 to 0.7 seconds. I usually like to see that number for a junior. If you are considerably longer, it'll increase your drive time. So you can shift that parameter of time up to 0.7, 0.8. If you're very, very long, like in the 6 foot plus to 6'4", 5 kind of range, you may even have drive times that are going closer and closer to 0.9 or 1. But for the average human who's learning how to use the machine, 0.6 to 0.7 is a pretty good place to start as far as drive time. So how would you figure out what's an efficient drive time for your 2K? And what I usually do is I have someone start with the drive time that they've been using. So say it's a junior and they're somewhere between 80 and 100. At super novices, I start them off at 80. 100 would be about where the average master or novice junior rower would be. I would get on the machine and we would start with a 250 meter sprint. We take a look at what's your drive time on that when we're at race pace, because this is going to matter at race pace, drive time at race pace. So we'll get on the machine, we'll do that 250 meters, we'll take a look at what that drive time is. So if the drive time on there at 80 was 0.55, that means 0.55 of a second. That means that I can take the drag up a little bit and we can repeat the 250 meters and we can take a look at it again and see if we go from 80 and we go to 90, if we get closer to between 0.5 to 0.7. The closer you get to the higher number, so that means that the drive is taking longer, it means that it's going to cost you more energy. There's going to be a level of efficiency with more drag. Increased drag can decrease your efficiency. So you have to find the balance of the two that makes sense for you. So just as an example, someone who on a 250 meter sprint could do potentially a 0.65 drive time with a drag factor of 110. Let's say. So that puts them in a good efficient range. And so it's not taking too long to drive, so it's not making their drive muddy. It's right in the center of the range, so it potentially, if we add more time to it, it may still be a drag factor that they could tolerate. So when we jump from that 250 meters to 500 meters, we're taking a look at, so now we're putting the person on the machine longer, and resistance over time will bring their fatigue up. So say the number was 90 and they do the 250, or do they do the 500 meter, and then we're taking a look at that, and they're getting a little bit more drive time. So the drive time creeps up to 0.65, 0.66, 0.67. Every time that we add more meters to that sprint, the drive time will start to veer towards longer because of fatigue. So you're looking for a drive time or a drag factor and the drive time that allows you to stay within the window of 0.6 to 0.7 without too much drift into over 0.7. So over 0.7 would be a sign that it's too much drag and you're inefficient. So you have to kind of play around with this in a great way. You're like, where do I find drive time, Adrian? If you're using erg data, it is one of the variables that you can put up on the screen so you could watch it, especially on a day when maybe you're doing like 10 by 500. You could take a look at what the drive time is, not on the first couple, on the middle couple, because I always feel like when you do those sprints, it's those middle ones that are kind of closer to what you could be able to do on your 2K without the fatigue being a factor. So those middle sprints are going to be the important ones. So I would say like sprint 5, 6, 7. Sprint 8, 9, and 10, that will give you a little bit of window into the idea of, is this too much drag? Would I be able to tolerate it on a 2K? You could use some of because the 500s could definitely count as a 2K predictor. There's a couple of workouts that are 2K predictor workouts, and you could use those to take a look at your drive time and see if you're hanging in, on a drag factor that is really helpful for you. The other thing you can do is when you're doing your 2K, you can make sure you're using like an erg data, or one of my personal favorites is Row Hero, because I like to look at the force curves. And that will give you a CSV file, an export to Excel, where you can look at every single stroke. And that's something that I do with my clients when we take a 2K or we take a 1K or we're doing a 2K predictor. I can see where the drag and drive time drift are within the piece, meaning that there could be points in the piece where fatigue is setting in and that drive time increases based on that drag factor. So we could use that then to say, okay, well, 120, drag, you started drifting your drive time around that third 500 and you weren't able to hold it. And then when you brought it back for the last 500, you were still very much at the top of your drive time. So how about we take a little bit off the machine, take a little bit of the resistance off the machine, lower the drag factor ever so slightly, and it'll make you go faster. Now, for the person, there's the opposite of that too. So someone who's making it through their test, really, feeling good, not necessarily feeling good, because like I always talk about, the 2K is a VO2 max test. So it's a test of how much oxygen you can carry over that time before failure. So it's not an easy test in any way, shape, or form. However, if you have a good beginning through the end and it's a solid test, there could be room for improvement simply by adding more drag. So you might be able to get a little bit more bang out of your buck. So this is the person who is able to maintain a 0.68 drive time from start to finish, solid third 500, able to sprint through the finish. And then when they're sprinting through the finish, that last 500, they're able to drop their drive time down to 0.6, 0.55 as they sprint. That athlete can add drag to the machine when they're doing their tests. So they get a little bit more resistance, they'll get a little bit more bang for their buck every drive, and they'll be able to get those extra meters, which will then add up over time. They will definitely feel more fatigued. They're definitely going to put more strain on their body, and it might be something that they need to train at in order to make it be something they can tolerate. But it is kind of a cheaty kind of way that you can mess around with your physiology and your time under stress, and see if then maybe you can pick up a couple seconds or a couple tenths potentially by doing that. So I hope that explains how to use drive time and drag factor to your advantage for the 2K. If you have more questions about this, feel free to reach out to me. This is something that I do all the time with my athletes. I take them through a bunch of different tests. We try to get in our 10-second test, our 1 minute. We do a 2K number. We could do a 6K number and an hour-long number too, and graph it all out and see what your physiology says you can do and what you're actually doing. So if that's something that you're interested in, please feel free to reach out and put any information that you want to learn in the comments. And thanks for listening today. Appreciate you. Take care.